Before the collapse of the Soviet Union, the superpower produced approximately 1,000 MiG-29 fighter jets, of which around 700 had been built for the Soviet Air Force. Iran was one of several clients for the MiG-29 in the late 1980s and currently operates 2 squadrons of MiG-29A jets. Russia was forced to retire hundreds of MiG-29s after its economy contracted sharply in the 1990s, and while it produces modernized MiG-29 airframes for export as the MiG-29M, which Egypt and Algeria both purchased, it also offers the original MiG-29A airframes of the Soviet era for foreign clients. These have been widely exported, most recently to Syria and India, with the old airframes upgraded with modern avionics, new engines and larger fuel tanks as the MiG-29 SMT and MiG-29 UPG respectively. These are the cheapest Russian fourth-generation fighters offered for export and could potentially be acquired in large number by the Iranian Air Force for a modest price. The less upgrades are integrated onto the old airframes, the cheaper they will be, with Iran having the ability to apply relatively basic upgrades domestically. If equipped with modern R-77 active radar-guided air-to-air missiles, an asset Iran's existing MiGs notable lack, the MiG-29s will be a formidable presence air-to-air with overwhelming superiority over the country's current fleet of F-4s and F-5s. The last year, 2016, the Iranian Air Force technicians have overhauled a MiG-29 aircraft, and the aircraft is back into service after it was grounded for 5 years. A senior Iranian Air Force commander had announced that the country attained self-sufficiency in overhauling military aircraft despite the sanctions imposed by the Western countries. We have become self-sufficient in airplane overhauling, pilot training and many other fields, head of Shahid Satari Aviation Science and Technology University Brigadier General Mehdi Hadian was quoted as saying by Tasnim news agency Monday. He reiterated that the Air Force is now self-sufficient in all areas, while all its planes fly in accordance with the required standards. Iranian officials have always stressed that the country's military and arms programs serve defensive purposes and should not be perceived as a threat to any other country. In June, Deputy Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces for Logistics Major General Mustafa Azadi announced Tehran's preparedness to overhaul the most advanced jet engines in the world. "I can say that we are able to provide the infrastructures to overhaul the latest version of any engines within 3 to 4 months," Azadi said in Tehran. "We have worked with many countries and have overhauled their planes, and we have even overhauled planes in the African continent and South America," Azadi said. In August 2013, Iranian Air Force Commander Brigadier General Hassan Shah Safi underlined the need for long-term planning in the field of parts manufacturing and indigenizing production of the parts and components needed for his force's fighter jets and aircraft. "We should pay heed to airplane parts manufacturing more than before by adopting long-term planning in the field and looking at the faraway horizons," Brigadier General Shah Safi said. "We have fully supplied all the parts needed by the Air Force through expediting a parts manufacturing movement, cooperation with Defense Ministry's Aviation Industries Organization and manufacturing testers, and utilizing veterans' experiences," he added. The Soviet Union's first fourth-generation fighter, the MiG-29, was faster than what NATO countries had, though limited by a somewhat short range. According to an American pilot who was able to fly Polish MiG-29s, the MiG-29 was highly maneuverable when needed, but seemed to use a lot of fuel to make that happen. Although an older airframe and perhaps lacking compared to more modern airframes, the MiG-29 is nonetheless still capable, and that's why Iran bought it. In 1997, the United States bought 21 MiG-29 fighter jets from Moldova in an effort to keep the capable airframes out of Iranian hands. 14 of the MiG-29 that the United States bought were later model MiG-29CS, which were at the time the most advanced variant available. The purchase was nothing unusual for the time, as the United States had been in the market for high-tech Russian tidbits after the fall of the Soviet Union. Cash-strapped Moldova had no use for the high-tech fighters and apparently gladly sold them to the United States. The arms purchase was part of the U.S. Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, a 3-year-old, $380 million effort to move to safety many of the remnants of the Soviet arsenal and was intended to prevent Iran from gaining an edge over its regional adversaries. Under the U.S. Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, the United States bought up a large number of technologies it wanted to keep out of the hands of terrorists, adversaries, or rogue states like North Korea or Iran. Perhaps the most notable success of the program was the fascinating story of Project Sapphire, in which teams from the United States clandestinely flew to Kazakhstan to remove large quantities of uranium that had been misplaced and forgotten after the Soviet collapse. Perhaps it was not enough. The New York Times reported in 1992 that Iran had acquired an enormous arms package from a number of Eastern European countries, as well as China and North Korea. The Saudi and French officials, who spoke on condition of anonymity, said Iran spent or committed $3.2 billion on arms in 1988 and 1989, primarily to the former Soviet Union for MiG fighters and tanks. In the heady days after the Soviet collapse, the purchase came often. In 1990 and 1991, these officials say, Iran spent or pledged $4 billion more to buy tanks, missiles and fighter jets. These weapons, most of which have been acquired, include 24 MiG-31s, 24 MiG-27s, 68 MiG-29s, 12 Tupolev 22M bombers, and several radar-detecting Ilyushin 76s, largely bought from the former Soviet Union and from Russia. Although Iran's airframes are piously old and incredibly overworked, they are still potent in some scenarios. American efforts may have been in vain after all.